Hello, and welcome to Returning to Us, a podcast that gives you strategies and tips for how to hack your brain, build and strengthen relationships, and to teach people how to recognize and neutralize their emotional states. I'll discuss emotional intelligence and regulation, how food and exercise impact the body and brain, and share lessons from my own lived experiences. I'm Lauren Spiegelmeier, the founder of the Behavior Hub, which is an organization that works to reduce the stressors of raising and educating children through a brain and biology-based lens. In these episodes, I'll share stories and strategies from my own life, work, and research, answer listener questions, and wrap it up with a try-it-at-home tip. Decades worth of information in just minutes. You ready? Hey everyone, this week on the podcast, I am not doing a solo episode. Today I am interviewing a very good friend of mine, Katie. So hi Katie, welcome to the show.
Hi Lauren, thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're going to jump right in here because I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet as per usual. So Katie, I know for everyone else that's a listener here, Katie is a primary school teacher in a rural school district in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to let you kind of take it from there and tell me a little bit more about your work, what you do, where your passion comes from.
Okay, so I am currently teaching first grade. I have been teaching first grade here for 5 years. Before that, I actually taught in Berlin, Germany. I taught at a private bilingual school there. I taught third and fourth grade mostly. So half of the week they learned in English, and then we would switch grade levels and they would go and learn in German then. Here in my current school, I am a general classroom teacher. I spend almost every day and all day with the same 21 kiddos, and I teach them everything from reading, phonics, writing, math, social studies, and science. So, and my passion to teach and why I teach is certainly, it stems from my own education experience with Lauren and I actually went to the same school, so many of the same teachers that we had, and just their passion encouraged me to continue on.
Yeah, I think I have a similar story. So I ended up in education because the influence of teachers around me. And then once I got into education and saw a lot of the issues in the educational system with behavior in particular and how people respond to behavior and how we deal with kids with challenging behavior, or, we tend to think challenging of like disruptive, but even kids that anxiety, depression that we overlook because they're more internalizing, decided that we need to do something a little bit different.
It was an eye-opening experience when you're on the other side.
Very eye-opening. Yeah, for sure. And you can also then understand why it's so challenging for educators to meet everyone's needs and address everything because you're in their shoes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, my next question was, what's your experience? And you kind of already covered that. So we can hop into the next one. And actually, before we even get into the next question, something good to talk about. If anyone watches this episode like 10 years from now, they'll be like, why are they talking about that? But right now, the world is still in a global pandemic, and school systems across the world have been in all these different states. They've been in virtual and distance learning and hybrids and in person. So I know we just had this conversation before we started the show, but you have been in person all year.
All year long. Yes.
With the exception of a few distance days here and there due to numbers.
And I teach both distance learners and in-person learners. So I have one distance learner for all year long, but I create content for her as well as all the other first grade distance learners. So
that's interesting. And we didn't talk about that. So I'm curious to know, what does that look like for you? Is that a totally separate program that you have to create?
Completely separate. We do not have any current curriculum. All of the online learning programs that were already created, we were not pleased with. And we wanted to provide something within that was directly linked to the classroom. So my student who's online right now, she is still enrolled at our public school. She's not on a distance or online platform at all. She's within our school district, and we use the program Seesaw, and we record all of our lessons because we are not live streaming. So we record all of our lessons and create materials to put on Seesaw, and we send them out every morning. They have 24 hours to complete them. And then if they do not complete them, they're marked absent, which does not happen very often. And then we do the same thing the next day.
And you do not have to answer this question if you're not comfortable answering it, but I'm curiosity is like, you're teaching in person all day, and then you've got to take that recorded content, upload it, create, the virtual platform of it. And I have a little bit of experience from being a professor and teaching remotely. Is like, in person, we do these discussions, but for people that can't be in person, or when we are doing an online course, like I still have to set up all the discussion boards for all those things to happen because you're not in person to have this discussion. So you're essentially doing two jobs, but my guess is that you are not getting paid for two jobs.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Just to clarify, and also to help people that are not in education understand what's really going on in education and how challenging this can be, because having been in the field and having taught in public school, there's a lot to do to prepare for a single lesson or a single week. And that was for me 6-8 years ago. So I cannot imagine right now what that must be like to have to create content beyond the normal week.
Yes, it is challenging. I will say, to give someone an idea of what's going on right now within just my own classroom. I'm a part of a team of 9. So I feel comfortable saying this is across the board in our area. Because we were out from March to May from last year. Mm-hmm. Essentially, students lost a quarter of kindergarten. Yep. We were strongly encouraged that no one would be retained, which is fine. That was what was handed to us. So with that, a lot of students have learning gaps. There's a lot of learning gaps. And even within this school year, right now last week I had 8 students in person. That means I had 12 distance learning for 10 days. So they might get something, not that they're getting completely the same content, but how they absorb that and how they understand it might be different than how they do in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So if they're 6 and 7 years old. If they don't have support at home, if they don't have internet connection, there's so many factors for reasons why they may understand a concept or a skill or why they don't. Mm-hmm. And it's my job to go and assess that, to find out what learning gaps they have and to help them find that gap. And after I've already taught it in the classroom or online as well. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm constantly going back and revamping and changing things. Today, before we got on here, I assigned 11 different homework assignments for 21 students, because not that each one is getting 11 assignments. No, each student gets one assignment, but there's 11 different ones because they're all differentiated. So they're all at a different skill that they need to meet. And here we are 15 days before the end of the year, and we're still finding those gaps to address.
And being able to resonate with you, having taught kindergarten in a rural PA school district, I feel like the last half, especially the last quarter for me, was so crucial, because the growth in the beginning was so slow. Because for those of you who have never taught kindergarten, I think he's going to go put some lights on.
No motion censored here.
Energy, yes. Amazing. But the first couple weeks of school are a bit of a disaster, because I had kids that were coming in already reading. I had kids that had never been to school before. I had kids that had experienced trauma over the summer. So you get this like 20 students, I think, all over the place. So the first month is just like figuring out how to get them all in a routine and regulated, all those things.
Absolutely.
Then you really kind of start getting into teaching, and then you go on a Christmas holiday break and they get some time off, and you come back and like, oh, they lost some stuff because they always have things summer break. Yeah. And then you come back and you get into like a pretty good flow after the new year. And I feel like I saw the most growth in the last quarter of the school year. Like I remember kids like jumping up reading levels, and kids I thought, oh my gosh, they're never going to get. I thought this in my mind, but like you have to check yourself. It's like
Right.
saying that never is going to happen is not a good thing, but you can't fathom how they can get to where they need to get to in this short amount of time. And then they do. And it's like that thinking about that time lost to me is like, oh.
Right. I think we call it the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Everything seems to click just at the right time. And then we get to enjoy all of the fun things at the end of the school year.
Yeah.
I have students who've never celebrated a birthday here at school. So like just that alone is a huge thing. So this is the first year they have a field trip. They're going to experience field day. I have little pictures on my school calendar and they're like, what's beach day? What are we going to do for sports day? It's just an exciting time. And it's almost like it is. They're enjoying the end of school for the first time.
Yeah.
So
it's something I talk about a lot with younger kids and like field trips and like field days and things like that, but also with like middle school, especially high school, at like prom and sports is like, these may be insignificant things to us adults, but these are things that kids look forward to, that they love. It's like things that keep them like energized and motivated. It's maybe what gets some kids to school. So letting them grieve the loss of some of those things is totally fine. To have big, strong, negative feelings about not being exposed to those things is totally fine. So I'm encouraging everyone to validate kids and let them feel those things, and don't just kind of invalidate them and share that it's selfish because there are bigger problems in the world. There are, but if we just do emotions, then emotions get stuck inside of our body, and that's never a good thing.
right. I absolutely agree. I have a kiddo whose mother tested positive recently, and now she's out almost until the end of the year. So she will miss her field trip and her field day again this year. And so I can't imagine the heartbreak. And I see it if my class got contact traced maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, but for the second time, a student was contact traced just because of where she sits. She was within range, and she knew exactly what was happening. And she's like, another 10 days. And she's a kiddo who does great online. She does fantastic. She meets me for Zooms and we do things together, but she just enjoys school so much that it's heartbreaking. So they are, even at 6 and 7 years old, they're grieving as well, and they're processing everything that's happening.
Yeah, I think so too. It's important to help them walk through those emotions, because sometimes we get so busy with our own lives or our own stressors, and we tend to forget about all the things that they're dealing with and all the changes that are going on. So, that all said, speaking of children's struggles, what are you seeing right now in education as struggles, or even like teachers' struggles? What are some things that are coming up for you?
I think for myself, time is definitely an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been someone who goes above and beyond, probably more than I should at times. I really enjoy my career. So I don't always find it to be such like, oh man, I'm spending another night at school. I'm here until 9 o'clock. It's different this year though. I'm not putting in time to do those extra things. Like at Halloween, I hang webbing from my ceiling and I put a spider up, and I try to decorate for every holiday or season. And I'm finding that I don't even have time for that. Like I am putting in those extra hours to prepare, to make more phone calls, to make more messages, to it just feels like there's never ending of what needs to be done, more so this year than ever before. And so time is definitely a thing. And I think time within our normal school day, oftentimes, so because at our district, we are teaching both distance and in person, we have been given 1 hour every day So we have an hour late start, which is great on one end. The hour is certainly not enough because I do Zoom during that time plus preparations. But it does take away an hour of instructional time with those in-person learners. So we've talked about standards and the rigor of even first grade and what's expected. And then to take an hour from that and still try to squeeze everything in has been very challenging.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on here is we've had parents, and I've had people in nutrition and different fields, but you're the first teacher to come on. So thanks for joining.
Absolutely.
I wanted, and it's been long enough, and I haven't been in the field during the pandemic. I'm in the field, I'm not in the classroom, haven't been during the pandemic. And I wanted someone's perspective of what's going on, what the struggles are, so that, I don't know that teachers always get a platform to share. I mean, sometimes, but like what's like really, and it's different for every district and every classroom and every school. But just hearing some different perspectives, I think really helps people to become more compassionate and understanding and empathetic for what's going on.
I want to be very clear that, as I say, like, these are the struggles. There are a lot of positives too. I am thankful that I see these kiddos and we are working together, and I have a small group, 3 feet apart, masked on, less than 10 minutes. We follow all the restrictions, but it's really, or guidelines, I shouldn't say restrictions, guidelines. It's a joy to have them here, to see their personalities. It is difficult through a screen. It's not impossible, but it can be difficult. And to see them enjoy our brain breaks and having them go to recess. And I think we'll touch upon this, but just having them have face-to-face with other students, kids, their peers, because that has been, I have observed there are challenges there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can expound upon that a little bit with like my brain background is like, technology is amazing. It is unbelievable how fast we have grown. And like the fact that we could go to distance learning and virtual, like that's almost mind blowing to me still. I think we totally take advantage of that and take it for granted. At the same time, technology does have some downfalls, like the blue light exposure. I mean, for kids who are on a computer all day, like eye strain and the light and the movement, and it's a stressor because computers are not natural. Based on human biology, we are not used to looking at a screen. We're not used to looking at artificial light. Your body can start to like adapt to it. But even like your focus is on this very small screen. Like I'm looking at you and like all day, I as an adult, and I'm like, I need to take more of my own advice here, but I'm looking at this small screen. My eyes are always focused on this tunnel. And what resets the stress response, what helps us to like calm down and ground is like a panoramic view. Because as hunter-gatherers, we always had to kind of have that panoramic view. You had to be aware of like, were there predators coming, like what's around, so that you could save yourself. So that was like a check-in of like, yep, checked, good, I'm reset. We don't have that reset. We're just always in kind of like stressed out state because we're always looking in that tunnel. And speaking of hunter-gatherers, like our brains are wired to connect in social groups. Like even if you feel like you are more introverted, like it could be a smaller level of connection or closer, smaller knit groups, but we still need to connect with people. That again goes back to how we survived and how our brains were developed. And people will maybe argue that you can connect with people virtually, and you can, but you don't get that physical touch. You don't get the same emotion. People's personalities aren't quite the same online because you don't have that like energetic feel. So I think you're right. In person, it's just totally different, and it's really conducive to like our growth and our stability and our stress response systems.
It's important because a lot of these kiddos aren't sure how to handle a disagreement or to take a compliment, or and at this age it's very normal that there's disagreements and tattling and different things, but it has been more of an extreme this year compared to other years. What we go over in that first month or 2 months, I talk a lot about classroom community and how we handle difficult situations and how it's so important to communicate. And I'm still having those conversations now this year. I had multiple conversations today. It's they so quickly want to share a problem, and I'll ask, did you talk to so and so about this first? No. And that is my first thing. I always say they are not able to read your mind. You need to share what you're feeling about the situation. And I normally then call both students over and they will talk in front of me so I can hear the conversation and we talk about it. So to model that for them, surprisingly, I'm shocked that I'm still having those conversations this far in the school year.
I think social emotional growth is going to be stunted from this past year. And I fear what that leads us into in the future. Like it's just such an important part of our collective community and society. And before even the pandemic, I mean, digital growth really impacted that. And I don't think that we need to go far to one side or the other. I just think we need a balance of
right.
both. Yeah. All right. So some issues that we need to resolve, that we need to work on. And we're just starting to talk about these things and how to address them, and maybe being a little bit more preventative and not so reactive once the problem is already here. But what about parents? What are you hearing from them?
I think it's funny. There is a spread between like a scale that's, and I feel like some parents are on one side and some parents on the other. Some of them are overly concerned. They are expecting their child to be further or more advanced than they would anticipate. Sometimes that comes from having an older child, so someone who has already been through the grade level, and they're saying, well, so and so isn't here, or they were already doing this. And there's some of that, but then there's some parents who they're not sure if this is normal or there should be a concern. And so that is an interesting perspective to me. Even like in a normal year, sometimes you have a handful of parents who are not aware. But I feel like this year I am fielding more questions about, is this appropriate growth, or not? And what can I do at home? And should we be doing more? So that's what I've been hearing a lot from parents. I'm not sure if there's too much otherwise. I mean, normal situations that are still occurring.
Yes.
So
I think one of the things I'm experiencing on my end is the world itself is still kind of stressful because there's still inconsistencies, there's constant changes and different regulations and different stressors, jobs changing, school systems changing, and it's exhausting. Like it's exhausting to our minds. Like our mental capacity is limited. You don't just have this unlimited mental bandwidth that you can use every day. It gets depleted. And I think it's getting depleted faster because of all the inconsistencies. So then I've got like families who want to be involved and want to help. And by the time they get home and they like made dinner, they're like, I'm so emotionally, physically, energetically done. I'm so strained from my day or my work or the demands that I don't have anything left. And then when I get to the weekend, it's recovery mode. Like I'm just trying to recover from everything I went through for the week.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
hard.
I can totally understand that. And I can relate to that myself. And I've talked to a few parents who are also feeling that way. And not only, keep in mind, like, yes, you talked about globally, but then all of our own personal things that are happening. I mean, I can share from myself, like in a couple days, it will be a year since my grandfather passed away, and I live with my grandma. And so that emotion is something in a normal year that would be difficult too. But it just feels like everything is compounded this year. I have a family who their daughter, one daughter is transitioning right now. Their son is in like a rehab facility. It's just like within a family, there are so many different facets that are um, relating to one another and how you connect and your emotions are. And then on top of that, what's happening within the world.
Yeah.
It's a lot for families.
I would encourage everyone. This is something I've been talking a lot about lately, and we're about to launch this trauma certificate program, and I'm very excited about it because a lot of my work is grounded in these behavior psychologists, and they're talking about a big leap right now is just out of the question, like for parents and for anyone that's trying to kind of alleviate the stress or the exhaustion or the burnout, like doing a big thing, like completely altering your diet or making a massive like exercise shift or a routine, like whatever it may be. Those things are all too big of jumps for us right now. Like maybe a couple of years ago, we could have made a big routine change very quickly, and we could have adapted and adjusted very quickly. And I don't think that's the case right now because we are just so stressed out and our systems are so activated. So for those that are feeling this like heavy and this weight and this exhaustion is trying to think about what's something that you would like to change that is a micro step of that. So like when I'm working with families and we're working on changing diets, like maybe we want to get to cutting gluten out. Like maybe that's an area where we want to work on with your family to work as mood and behavior and things in your child. Let's not start tomorrow with cutting all gluten out. Like that is a massive jump. So let's just stop buying one gluten item that you normally buy. So if you buy bagels or waffles or something for breakfast, just stop buying that item this week and still buy all the other gluten items. And then once you have like a week or two without the waffles, then maybe another glutinous item, one step at a time, micro step. And that way it's not such a shock to the system. And not only is it a shock to the system, it's not sustainable. Like when you go from not exercising to trying to exercise 20 minutes a day or more, it's not sustainable because you get too exhausted too fast. So start small, maybe start with like 2 minutes a day.
Right.
And then you feel that success. And then you can do the 2 minutes the next day. And you're like, okay, I can do this workout thing. I can do 2 minutes a day. I can do 3 minutes a day. I can do 5 minutes a day. And then you build a routine. So
that's great. Yeah. I can totally understand now why my kick of trying to work out so quickly was not working. I was like, I am so good at making routines and sticking to things, and it just isn't working this year.
Yeah. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. The other thing too is I talk a lot with families about decision fatigue. Like we don't have, again, that mental bandwidth to access logic and reason for as long as we used to throughout the day. Therefore, would we have to make a decision at the end of the day or after, a certain point of the day, we avoid the task, the activity, whatever, because we're like, I just can't even think about how to start this. Like people will avoid cooking and get takeout. It's like, I just can't even think about like what kind of meal to make, or I'm not going to work out because I can't even think about like what to wear to the gym. So something that's really helpful to make these tiny habits stick is to reduce the decision making in the process. So if you're going to go to the gym, like maybe on Sunday, pick out all your workout clothes for the whole week. Or maybe it's, if you're going to work out 2 minutes a day or 3 minutes a day, pick like a short sequence that you're going to go through for those 3 minutes and do the same sequence every day for the entire week. And then once you feel like you've accomplished that and it's routine, you're good. And then maybe you like change one component of that and then change one more and then extend it. But yes,
I completely understand about decision making. I am very spoiled. I do live with my grandma, and it's just her own ritual and routine and generation that they cook dinner. She had a full-time job, but she has always cooked dinner. I have to laugh because even now she has a routine. Like Monday, she cleans the bathrooms. Tuesday, she cleans the floors. Wednesday, she cleans the wall. I'm not joking. She cleans the walls and the ceiling. But she'll always ask me either the night before or the morning of, what would you like for dinner? And my answer is always, I do not care, or I do not have a suggestion, because that's another decision on my plate that I I will eat whatever you make for me. I will be happy with it.
Yeah.
If I don't have to make a decision, that's wonderful to me. I would love that. So
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's just based on how our brain works in a stressed out state. Even if it's a micro stressed out state, you don't have to be exposed to traumatic stress to feel this exhaustion. Chronic stress will do it for you. And I think right now a lot of the world is in chronically stressed. So yeah, and that can be applied to not just us as adults and like self-care and stress management. It can be applied to kids' routines and all kinds of things. So think about your end goal, break it down. I mean, I do this for my annual goals for myself and for the business. Every December, I go away for like a 3-day trip to a new city, and there's like some enjoyment that comes from that. And then part of that trip is taking the year and thinking about like in each big area of my life, in relationships, in finance, in business, in network, like what are the big 1 or 2 things I want to accomplish? And when you think about that at the beginning of the year, you're like, wow, that's a huge goal. That's a lofty goal. I'll never get there. Like, what am I thinking? But if you take that goal and you break it down, so I break it down not even into quarters. I break the quarters down into months, and I break the months down into weeks. And when I look at what I need to do each week to get to the monthly goal, to get to the quarterly goal, to get the annual goal, I'm like, oh, I can totally do that. Like I want to read a book a month. I just need 5 pages a day. I can read 5 pages a day. So yeah, just breaking things down.
yes.
Yeah. I think we'll need a lot more of that in the future, because just the bigger, more broad things we're just going to procrastinate. We're going to be like, not even thinking about that.
Right.
Put it off to the side. So reduce your decision making. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about system change. Because we brought up some issues we're dealing with, and those issues might change and adapt, and they always do, based on the world circumstances and the educational system circumstances. But talk to me about some things that you think we should or could change, or any ideas you have, just about system change in general.
In education, yes.
In education, yes.
I mean, as we talk about social emotional learning, I think it would be wonderful if that was an area where we focused on more than just in a guidance classroom. Yes, and it's even more apparent now than ever before why that is so important. And unfortunately, as educators, we do not have time always to just add that. I have it on my own list of things that I want to teach or want to address. And when the topic comes up, oftentimes I am talking about it. I took a half an hour today to talk about something. But until it's in curriculum, teachers who are not interested in teaching it will not. Mm-hmm. 2, it will not become a priority within the school districts until it's required. Mm-hmm. And so that's one area that I feel strongly that we do need to see change. There's lots of other things I would like to see, but that is one of my very strong areas that I would like to see. And that's beneficial, not just for our students, but for globally as they mature and grow and become members of society.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I always say this when I'm speaking at conferences, but we are biological first, not logical. Our brain is wired. It was developed with emotional senses first and then logic and reason. Yet the educational system is like, let's put logic and reason first, right? And then we'll deal with emotions like when we have time. That's not how we were born. That's not how we were developed. That's not like, it's just so backwards to me. And I can say that having been in the educational system, having taught in the educational system, it's not like I don't have experience with this. I'm like, yeah, like it's working. I've lived it. It's not always working. It's a lot. And kids cannot be present for learning and retaining and memory systems until their safety needs are met first. And we think safety needs like, food and shelter. And it's like, yes, those are some of them. But in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're talking about like psychological safety. We're talking about like anxiety and fear of family members passing away or dealing with family members passing away. Like these things have to be addressed in education, in the home, because if they are not, the brain space will not be available for kids to learn. And we are just teaching to blank slates. Yeah. Working on that one though. Yeah. And I think you're right. It unfortunately, until it becomes a mandated program, my best luck with teaching this in schools has been mostly with private schools or really progressive public schools. It is such a hard sell to a public school. And ironically, the schools that it is the hardest sell to are probably the ones that need it most. They are the schools struggling the most. I'm like, I have your answer. Like, I know what you need. What am I not doing to convince you of that?
Right.
But we've got to see that change first. Because even as schools get more stressed and they need this more and more, I have felt myself pull back from schools and work more with families because I just can't get through the importance of this.
And there might be schools that absolutely agree, but they feel their hands are tied because of those standardized tests and funding. And I mean, the list goes on and on for reasons why they may agree, but to find the time or the money.
Yeah.
Until it's mandated. You're right. That's a great word, mandated for it.
Yep. If we could just pull some of the neuroscientists out of the tech world and put them in the decision-making of education world, which probably will never happen. No, I won't say never. Unlikely to happen, harder to happen because we don't pay what the tech world pays. So there's less desire for people to come impact the system. So that's a whole other problem in itself, which we do not have enough time to delve into today, nor do I want to deal with the backlash that would come from that. So
we'll just keep moving along here.
That said, let's change subjects. All right. If it's okay with you, why don't we talk a little about what are your personal practices, whether they be school related or not, maybe just life practices that you incorporate into your life to help to respond to this, to deal with emotions, to deal with the heavy, just deal with anything at all, just being a human.
Okay. Well, here at school, one thing for me is I like to be prepared as much as possible. And that just requires me to get materials ready. So I take usually an evening, or I try to do a little bit here and there, but mostly I take a chunk of time, usually a Friday afternoon, and I stay late and I print off everything that I need for the week and I prepare. And at the end of the day, it's important to me to clean up. So just having that routine and knowing that my space is ready for the next morning is really important. And I do some of that in my personal life at home as well. Routine is important. It's a little bit of a crazy time. I do have I go to students' baseball games or students' softball or soccer. So those things come up and it throws my routine off a little bit, but not majorly. So for instance, I have a time that I try to be in bed by. I have a time that I wake up by. And I do the same thing in that sense of it. So routine is something that's very important to me. Additionally, having some time alone. So that's how I deal with the heaviness. Yes.
People are like, what, do you want to be alone? Like, haven't you been alone for the whole last year?
No, keep in mind, I have been in person. So
yeah.
I like to I journal, and I take my journal and I will go sit in a restaurant alone and have a nice meal and just sit and write or read. That is my way to deal. And it's just a stress relief. I can't say that there's one aspect of it or why it works for me, but I think that's important. You have to find what works for you and be okay with it and find time for that.
Yep. And giving yourself grace when you don't meet it, or you don't get to do it, or you get knocked off routine. Like, it's okay. We're human. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to work the way we want. It's just working to improve and get better, not toward perfection.
That's right.
We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of routine here in just a second, and kind of how that relates to the brain, because that's your try to home tip. But as a book lover, and I think you are as well.
Yes.
I always ask those questions. People are like, why do you ask that question? I'm like, because there are a bazillion good books out there, and I'm always curious to know what people have to say.
Right.
But
Oh,
any good book recommendations for our
oh,
listeners?
I have stacks and stacks of books. I cannot wait for summer because this school year, I think I've started 2 books and not finished one of them yet. So I am thrilled because we are done at the end of May. So I have 3 solid months to read. One that is at the top of my list, it is kind of a series, but not exactly. It's I think it's called the Best American Travel Essays.
Okay.
And so each year they come out with a new collection of travel essays. And it was a gift to me when I was living in Berlin. It was like a hostess gift, and someone came to stay with me. She brought it, and I absolutely loved it. And now every time I'm in a thrift store or a little bookstore, I am seeking these books out because they go on for years and years and years. And so
Amazing.
I I love collecting them and reading them. So
That's awesome.
I have 2 on my list right now to do.
And I just read this somewhere recently that reading is a wonderful mindfulness practice. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. When a physical book, when you're reading a physical book and not on like a Kindle or a tablet or device, it is a really good mindfulness practice because you are looking at the pages of the book, you're turning the pages, your eyes need to scan the words. So you can't simultaneously be doing like your phone and a book. I mean, you can have your phone and you're switching, but when people read, they're usually attuned to the page and the words and what they're reading.
Right.
So whereas our attention is always being drawn in so many different directions, and that also depletes us, reading a book restores us because you have to be focused on what's in front of you. And I was like, yes, more reading.
I'm good with that.
Same. Okay. Well, I'll link that in the show notes. So anyone that wants like a mind relaxation, chill, that sounds like, especially if you're interested in travel, or even if you're not, it sounds like I think people would gain a lot from looking these up and checking them out. But it sounds really interesting. I'm gonna check it out because I need to stop reading so much scientific literature.
I have some of that, but not too much.
I'm curious to know, this is not on my docket of questions, but real quick, just who's your favorite children's storybook author?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I love Mo Williams, but I mean, I have a hard time picking one.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm looking around and there's just, I don't know, so many. As a kiddo, I loved Arthur books. So Mark Brown,
Yep.
loved his books. I loved the show. Trying to think what else, but I am very much like, I like to teach the classics per se.
Yes.
So I have 2 students who are above and beyond first grade reading level, and we are reading Stuart Little together.
Yes, that's amazing.
So, and we did the Boxcar Children as well, which was so much fun. So, and that's a whole series. So they're like, one of the little girls said, I'm reading the second one now. And that was not an assignment. It was not from me. She went out on her own and she found it and she's reading them now. So
it's what used to be like the Netflix binging, where you watch show after show after show. Like the more mindful, brain-friendly practice is getting a book that's a series and falling in love with a series and sticking with the series. But Mo Willems is one of my absolute favorites, and I know it's a little cliche because everyone's like, oh yeah, everyone loves Mo Willems, but his books are hilarious, and we need more lightheartedness and laughter. And I love, as like a emotions person, studies emotions, like there are so many big, strong emotions in his book. I love his book so much. I got his characters tattooed on my arm.
That's awesome.
So for those of you that are watching the podcast, listening to the podcast, and you're not watching on YouTube, you can't see what I'm showing, but I have permanent ink on my arm of Mo Willems. Love that guy. And mostly for a conversation starter, people say, what is that you have on your arms? I'm like, oh my God, it's this amazing child storybook author. You check him out. Like even if you're an adult, you'll still laugh at the books. Great reading.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
It is a favorite. It is something, and I have the stuffed animals and the kids love them. Unfortunately, I can't have them here this year, but it is something that we just really enjoy. So
makes sense. Hey, anything else that we did not talk about that you want to share with us?
I don't think
notes.
Fun notes. Well, I have to ask you, we both enjoy traveling a lot.
Mhm.
Any travel plans for the summer?
Oh, interesting you ask, and we'll talk about this in a couple weeks.
Okay. If I'm bringing anything up that you don't want to discuss,
No,
just
no, no,
heck.
you're good. It's just good because I've been practicing sharing more of my personal life in the business. So here's an
Okay.
opportunity for everyone to hear what I do with my free time when I actually do take off work. A good friend of mine is from India, and she actually moved here from New Zealand. She lived there for 5 years for her graduate program, and now she's in her like postdoc, I believe, or she's researching. She's a neuroscientist, ironically enough. Really wants to see the United States, and it's hard to go see some of those cities that I would recommend because they're not as fully open or just not the same experience. So we are over July 4th going to Zion National Park and Bryce Canyon. And we're
That's
gonna
great.
because we fly in, get in a car, like just her and I, like camp cabins, like pretty socially
Wonderful.
distanced. Yeah, so looking forward to that. And I built a tiny home.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to drive that across the country in August as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that should be fun. Those are very different travel plans than before. I used to be leaving the country a couple times a year, but
Right.
these travel plans just involve seeing more of our glorious country because we have some amazing things in the United States that I surely have taken for granted.
Yes. I am hopeful that when I heard Belgium is reopening, my fingers are still crossed that I will go abroad this summer. Last year was the first time in 7 years that I have not been to Europe. That was painful.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping to get back there this summer. If not, I'm doing something similar to you. I am traveling a lot within the United States, mostly the East Coast,
Okay.
but maybe a
Good
trip
places.
to Texas, definitely to South Carolina, different things like that. So
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. And in the meantime, we're going to grieve the loss and let go of those emotions. And
there was a lot of grieving over that this year. So
I hear you. I was like, I remember, and I mean to wrap up, but I don't want to keep you because I know you've spent a very long day in school, and I want to be respectful of your time. But when the pandemic hit, and my mother and I had a trip to Argentina, and it was her choice, and she's been dying to go to Argentina, and I had taken like 6 months of Spanish lessons with a guy who lived in Argentina virtually. And the pandemic hit, and I remember saying to her, and like stuff was starting to shut down. I was like, we had it planned for, I think it was over Easter of last year, so it was like sometime in April. And I said to her, I said, don't worry, they're going to get control of this. We're still going to go to Argentina. Like,
right.
we're not going to cancel the flights yet. We're good. Let's be optimistic. Everyone's being so negative right now. Like 2 weeks later, I was like, no, we're not going to Argentina. Not now, and probably not for a long time.
I was very optimistic until they canceled my flight on me. I did not cancel it when I got the email that says your flight has been canceled. And I was just, oh, okay, this is not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of you out there that are grieving the loss of your travel and your vacation, you're not alone, and it's
Not alone.
okay. And we will get back there someday. It's going to be someday soon. We call that into the universe. All right. Well, to wrap up, we're going to share our try it at home tip, or Katie's try it at home tip, which is keeping routine and journaling. So just to go into routine a little bit really quickly, this is so important for all of us, even if you're not a routine person, because the brain likes pattern, and routine is a pattern. So when the brain knows what's coming and has a routine and has a pattern, it is less likely to stress. So I would say, if you find yourself a non-routine person seeking routine, that's your body and your brain's subtle way of saying, I need some pattern consistency here because there's so much inconsistency everywhere else. So plan a routine. It doesn't need to be your whole day as a routine, but maybe morning, maybe evening, maybe just a lunch routine. Start small, micro habits, create a routine. Stay home tip, or try to home tip number 2, stay at home. Try to home tip number 2 is journaling. And I'm just going to let Katie expand on this a little bit because journaling can be so broad. So if she's comfortable, maybe her journaling practice, so you all can maybe give that a shot.
So I started small, just like Lauren said, and I just bought any journal, any piece of paper, and I wrote 3 positive things that happened to me that day. So that I did for at least 2 years. And now I've kind of ventured out a little bit more. I like to add some photographs sometimes, or a little bit of drawing, but I still stick to that three things a day, and I do bullet lists. So I think that's a great way to start. And if you're working with the kiddo, I think that's even easy for them. You can ask them, maybe 3 is a stretch. Start with 1.
Mm-hmm.
What is one good thing that happened today, or one thing that you really enjoyed?
Yep.
And go from there.
Yep. Yeah. Don't think that journaling just has to be sitting down and writing pages for hours. It
Right.
is not. You do not need to write in sentences. People journal and they don't even write any words. They journal like images and icons, and you can do it however you want, however it feels good and right to you. But I would encourage you to give it a shot, see how that feels for you. And it's a great way to get thoughts out of your mind, especially anxious thoughts or heavy thoughts. Get them down on paper, they get out of your mind. So a great practice.
And there are apps too that you can.
Yeah.
So I personally love writing, like the actual action
Same.
of writing.
Yep.
But there are apps, and a really cool thing I found recently, I won't go on very long, but this app, you can create a book. They will print a physical book of your journal for you. So I have taken my blog and uploaded it into this app, and then they printed my study abroad experience in Italy. I have a physical book of it now that I can flip through and share.
That's amazing. Yeah, there are so many options. I mean, for whether you want to physically write, apps, software programs like Google journaling options, or Pinterest journaling, and you will get, maybe don't actually. That's going to get you to decision fatigue. And you know what, just on second thought, go ahead and just do what we said to do.
Start slow.
Oh man. All right. So
well,
that is it for that's our sign to get out of here.
Yes, it is.
For you to go home. So that's it for today's episode of Returning to Us podcast. Don't forget our try at home tip, which is to create a routine and to journal, maybe put those together and create a journaling routine. And if you would like me to answer a future question on this show, email me at podcast@thebehaviorhub.com, or you can shoot me a text 717-693-7744 and lock in what you learned today by doing it right away. Easy way to do this. Leave a comment, leave a review with your biggest takeaway, and don't forget to subscribe to future episodes to learn more ways to hack your brain. Until next episode, I am Lauren Spiegelmeier, and thanks for joining Katie and me, and thanks, Katie, for sharing your story with us.